Thank you very much, and welcome to the tax hearing that was scheduled for tonight. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and please note that all board members and the superintendent are present at this time. If you would, just for a moment, join me for a moment of silence, and during that moment of silence, if you remember Luke Short, the young football player that suffered a fracture in his neck in a football game last Friday night, you maybe lift him up. Let's have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. You'll stand with me as we say the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda for this tax year?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Mr. McCray made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Herbert made a second. All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. All board members were in favor. The agenda is adopted. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Stoll if he would explain to everybody the tax rates we're considering tonight.
So as you all know, the Kentucky Department of Education submits to us a recommended tax rate. The one that they always submit is one that gives you a potential of increasing revenue by 4%. To do that this year would have been a tax raise, and no one on the board was interested in doing that. So that eliminated that particular rate. The other two rates are the current rate, which is 66.7 cents, and the possibility of the compensating rate, which is 65.1. We advertised in the paper the amount to maintain the rate from the current year, 66.7 cents, to stay at 66.7 cents, since a compensating rate did not require a hearing. So regardless of the decision made tonight, you all will have adopted a rate one way or the other. You all have seen some of the numbers that go with this. I think you're aware of those. If you have questions, we're happy to answer those for you if we possibly can. I think that, yeah, it's in the document that I provided you today. You'll notice in the fourth, I'd say a paragraph, but it's a sentence alone. General areas to which the revenue above the 2021 revenue would be allocated are to safety measures and to instruction. So that's the expectation KDE has. That would be the expectation of what we would be doing with any additional funds that we were to take in through this process. Some questions? Happy to address.
If anybody has questions from the public, since no one's here at this time, well, that's what I was going to ask.
We haven't received any requests for that. So we would make an assumption that they have, because we would have to put them into the meeting. So we did not receive any requests for that even up until today. So. Typically you allow about 30 minutes for this session. So what Chris will do for those online, he will leave the video feed live and he will turn the audio off. And then should we have somebody come in from outside who wishes to make a comment during that block of time, they certainly can. We would turn the feed back on so that those people who are watching can see that.
we need to share any of the comments? So
Maybe just explain that we were quiet and giving the public an opportunity to speak if they chose to through the live. Just explain what we were doing. I think it's fine.
So just so everyone is aware, who were watching, the only reason that we muted was to not have you have to listen to off-topic conversation. There was some on-topic conversation, so we've opened this back up so that if that conversation were to continue, you'd be aware of it. Most of the conversation was simply around what those numbers might look like. There was no decision made during this time. This is really a time set aside for the public to have a comment. The board will be voting based on what was in the newspaper. You're not changing that. You're voting it up or you're voting it down. And so your all's conversation is kind of already ahead of conversation. So, but we will be live now. So if there is any additional conversation, everybody's aware of it.
So I'm assuming that even though people may not have signed up, either speak, that they still could go through Chris, if they have a question for us or a comment, they can still do that.
Is he monitoring that? Chris, are you monitoring that for feedback? Okay, thank you.
Well, with one of our meetings, people made comments that they couldn't hear. Y'all did that? You did?
It's really hard to get all that technology to work just right every time. There's always. Challenges too.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
It's about the quietest tax hearing I've seen in almost 17 years on the board. Even Mike's quiet.
Don't push your luck.
10 minutes.
Hmm.
10 minutes.
Sorry.
You want to take it? So Ms. Davis shared that someone had contacted her and said that they learned that the board's looking at a tax increase to support a new sports complex at the high school. And I think speaking on behalf of the board, I can clearly say that the board has no interest whatsoever in raising tax rates. There is not an expectation, even of an option in front of you tonight, to raise taxes at all. Relative to the sports complex, I think there's been a little bit of miscommunication as well about that. I don't think you all have ever indicated a $20 million sports complex anywhere. I think what you've indicated is maybe maxing at around $20 million, the work that you would like to do for the district. That would include some sports facilities in the high school to complete the process that was started there several years ago. But you're also looking at the possibility of a bus garage. You're looking at the possibility of renovations at each of the schools. So I think when people hear $20 million sports complex, it's a bit of an inaccurate statement. And again, not one that the board has ever come close to saying, as of today, you've not even identified what your projects would be. The $20 million number is kind of a place that you all talked about potentially capping your bonding. And your bonding, I think that we talked about last week, was just under $29 million. So you wouldn't be tapping that level as well. So if there was a miscommunication on our part in any way that indicated that there was going to be a tax increase, that's not accurate. And if there was a miscommunication on our part that indicated that there was a $20 million athletic complex coming, that's an inaccuracy as well. So we want to make sure people understand that. Again, if that miscommunication occurred, we certainly understand how they would arrive at that conclusion. But again, I want to make everybody clear that you don't even have in front of you today a possibility of raising taxes.
And the funding for building
It's a separate
is
component.
Yeah.
It's separate.
I have also just gotten a message about that, and there is the impression that we are having a tax hearing to increase taxes to fund the new building project. And this person has sent me a snippet from what I think is, it looks like the newspaper maybe, and it says, early stages of a project to ultimately construct a new 2,500 seat gymnasium and an athletic complex at the new high facilities on Industry Road. The $20 million project had been awarded to the architectural firm Sherman Carter Barnhart Architects, however, before a contract, and then she stopped her picture. So I think that may be the misconfusion, but something that might help is if folks understood the line of revenue we have to support the district facilities plan and the buildings and the grounds and the facilities that we have in our district. That line of money is earmarked for that purpose, and what that bonding potential is right now and why we're even looking at it in the first place. And it has nothing to do with our tax hearing for the year. Those are two separate projects altogether. So maybe Mr. Soul, you could speak to the bonding potential and how that is earmarked for facilities.
Sure. So each year, there are 3 nickels that are collected on behalf of the board that are part of the regular taxing process. And those nickels are set aside specifically for construction purposes, and that's where the bonding comes from. You can't use that to pay a teacher's salary. You can't use that to buy curriculum. This is what that money is set aside for. 2 of those nickels have the capability of being equalized. And that means that for every $1 that someone pays into that, you actually get $2. So it's a nice benefit for you. You have a 3rd nickel that's about to be equalized, which will bring in some additional revenue. And again, that revenue can't be utilized for anything other than construction processes. Last week, we shared with you that Garrard Financial, who's your fiscal advisor, said that currently, and we know that that doesn't really amount to a whole lot because things change on a daily basis when it comes to rates, you have about $29 million of bondable potential. It's not $29 million in the bank. It's not $29 million that you can go put your hands on today. It would be through selling a 20-year bond to cover those costs, which would be paid for then through the same nickel process. So that piece is available regardless of what you do with taxes. If taxes stay the same, there's still 3 nickels. If the taxes went down, there's still 3 nickels. Taxes went up, there's still 3 nickels. So you're kind of working in that same area all the time. Again, it's a great opportunity to say once again, the idea of a project is inaccurate. There is not a plan to do a single project. There's a plan to look at multiple projects over multiple areas in multiple buildings. So that's just something we need to continue to clarify for folks so that they have that understanding that you all are not about to make a construction project of one single thing that would be a $20 million project. You haven't even, again, that statement that the contract had been awarded to an architectural firm is inaccurate. That you had selected an architectural firm, you had not entered a contract with them, and you certainly hadn't selected the projects that you were going to consider moving forward. So again, you're not looking at raising a tax today in any capacity.
And it might be noted that the information, the data that's been collected, in the last 10 years, our current rate is the second lowest we've had the last 10 years. The only other year that's lower was in 2017.
And unfortunately, coming out of the 2017 year, you had to raise that back the following year. And I think all of you are hoping to stay here or see it decline moving forward, not to have to reach a point where you have to ever raise taxes.
And that's what I've explained to some folks is that I don't want to have to come down the road and raise taxes. We'd love to cut taxes.
And you did the last 2 years. You reduced the rates the last 2 years. At 629, you probably
Okay, well,
taken action.
we haven't had any response from any of the public, so the public part of our hearing has come to a conclusion. Item number 4 is to adopt the tax rates, and since we left it on the table to leave the rates the same, if we had chosen the compensating rate, we wouldn't even have tax hearing. So what I need is a motion to leave the rates the same, and if that motion fails, then we'll automatically go to the compensating rate. Mr. Stoll, is that correct?
Yeah, unless you all wanted to enter a conversation about changing the rates somewhere in between. I didn't feel like that's where you were. I think you have 2 rates that you're looking at. One is staying the same, the other one would be going to the compensating rate. So I think you need to say what you just said again.
Okay, so if I could have, what we need is a motion to leave the tax rates the same. That's the way it was in the paper. And if I get a motion in a second, if that motion is defeated, then we would automatically go to the compensating rate. So if I have a motion to leave the tax rates the same.
I move that we leave the tax rate the same.
All right, Ms. Davis made a motion to leave the tax rates the same. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Hurt, second. Now, is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, let me know by uplifted hand. All opposed, like sign. Okay, 3 were in favor and 2 were opposed. The motion carries to leave the tax rate the same. All right, well, thank you all that may still be with us for your patience. I know it might have been a boring 20 or 25 minutes, but we appreciate your input and all you've heard. This time, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
Make motion with adjourn.
Okay, Mr. McQuarrie made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hurd, second. All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. Thank you all very much. The tax hearing is adjourned. Now we move into our special call meeting for the purpose of discussing our architect. And at this time, I'd like to call that meeting to order. And item number 1 and item A is to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Make motion we adopt the agenda.
Okay, Mr. McQuarrie made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
First, second. All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. All board members were in favor. The agenda is adopted. And item number 2 is discussion regarding architect for our upcoming projects.
You all had an opportunity to hear from Sherman Carter Barnhart last week. You had a presentation from them following the changes that they had at their firm. You're really at a spot where you have to make a determination about the architectural firm that you'd like to stick with so that you can then move forward with your selection of construction manager or something in lieu of that. But you really probably don't need to do that until you've made a determination. So I would say that your conversations tonight are about where you feel like you are with Sherman Carter Barnhart and what steps you want to take. The item after this, after the discussion, is for you to be able to take an action on what you want to do, either to reaffirm or to move in a different direction.
Thank you, sir. Who's first? stay with Sherman Carter Barnhart? Or you want to move in a different direction?
Different direction.
Okay, Mr. McQuarrie? Huh?
I for one.
Well, okay, that's what we want to hear from. And you have a particular direction you'd like to see us going?
I think the second, we already voted to part two, eliminated the rest, so I think the rest with the second one.
And that would be top filter, summer.
Filter, summer car. I have some reasons. If we get into a discussion after the vote,
Okay.
or after motions made.
Well, we're in the discussion part right now.
Anyway, it's slice and dice, it's a tough decision.
Yeah.
And it's not that our previous architectural firm did not give a good presentation. It's not about that. I think it's more to whether or not we feel like there was a break of trust, or whatever emotion we maybe feel at this particular point, where we were kind of thrown for a loop, having to get back to this point.
I'd like to thank Sherman Carter Barnhart for the work they did. They made a nice presentation. Took us 3 times to get to what we had hoped to see. But personally, I had hoped to see. But what we saw in the presentation last week is what I had hoped to see the first time around. We did not see that, but they had worked hard and they had some nice thoughts. It's a situation where we're all trying to make up for what happened. We are. It's an uncomfortable situation. Appreciate their efforts, but I have concerns. I still have concerns, but I feel like that they have tried. I appreciate that, so I want to say thank you to that.
I tell you, I was impressed with the presentation. And the options they gave us on the different types of project that we could do for this amount of money, and so forth. I appreciate them, people watching. Maybe we don't really understand all about soft costs. And I asked them, to explain what soft costs were. They did, I think they did an excellent job. And the amounts, they were good to explain the amounts of that roughly $20 million for all the project did not include soft costs, which would be about $3 million, I believe. The neighborhood of $3 million.
I was also impressed with the presentation that they offered to us last week. When we were interviewing the multiple candidates all in the one day, that lengthy long day, I had narrowed my top 2 down to Sherman Carter Barnhart and Clotfelter. And we made a decision to pursue a contract with Sherman Carter Barnhart. And I'm comfortable staying with that decision because they are still in my top 2 pick. And it seems that in our district, and I'm going to say this and hope I don't regret it, but it seems in our district that we often make very, very important decisions based on who is the local and who is the favorite. And in this case, that implies that there were members of the board who selected Sherman Carter Barnhart because Kevin Cheeks is a local. And that should not have even entered into the decision of which of these architectural firms can give us, work with us on our projects that we have in our district and to help meet our needs. And so while it was in our advantage for Kevin to be a part of that firm, it was not the underlying cause for me to make my vote to go with Sherman Carter Barnhart. But I think if we, as a board, go back on that decision now, it clearly implies and leaves the statement that we were entering into a contract because of a relationship that we have with one person who is no longer a part of the firm. So I still have a great deal of confidence in Sherman Carter Barnhart. When we made our decision and we selected our top two, I think I said in that meeting that either of those two would be fine for me. I would have voted for either one of them. But we, after a great deal of discussion, settled on Sherman Carter Barnhart. My confidence still rests with them.
Okay.
I can agree with Ms. Davis, the fact that when the first presentation from them came about, we didn't necessarily get the visual of what we were looking at. But then I think they more than compensated for it when they came back around this time. It helped me get, I'm a visual person. I like to see what the proposal is and where they thinking about putting various projects and how that's going to impact us, and their explanation of the soft costs, things I never knew about until we started this process. It's kind of like sometimes you go buy a car and all the next thing you know, you paying much more than you ever thought about, because there are certain hidden factors that's not there. Well, I like somebody being right out front and saying, these things are here, and I appreciate that. And I'll just go back on what I was saying a while ago. It's a difficult decision, quite a difficult decision.
And as when we voted, it was a board decision. It wasn't 5-0 vote to hire Sherman Carter Barnhart, but it was a board decision. And I want this board to know that I don't have, whichever way the board votes to go tonight, I'm fine with it.
The thing that strikes me is, we gave a specific list to 5 different architectural firms of things we wanted to see. One of the things on the list specifically was a breakdown of what the projects would cost. And we eliminated one firm because they didn't give us that breakdown. And there was another firm that didn't give us a breakdown then either, but we didn't eliminate them. The other 3 firms followed the guidelines, and they made presentations, and they presented what they thought we needed to make our decision from what we had, the questions we asked them and the information we requested. 2 did not. One got eliminated for that very reason, the other one did not. That's strictly just fact. Those firms are competent. I do kind of think if it takes somebody 3 chances, 3 bites at the apple to get it right on the last presentation, then they've had an unfair advantage as far as there's mistakes on the presentation they made. Auditorium is listed at $2,200,000 in one place, and on the pie chart, the other place is and another place is $3,235,000. Which is it? Is it $2,200,000 or is it $3,235,000? We were supposed to get a gym for $6 million, which I think all of us really knew that was not going to happen. But that was a statement that was made during the presentations. And the soft cost, the only reason they mentioned anything about soft cost, our superintendent, Mr. Stoll, asked the question. So they've had 3 times to come before the board, and everybody else had one. So just by continuation, it seems that they've, and I think we were looking for another set of eyes, and we thought that Kevin Cheek was going to be our front person, the one that he lived here, his family here, I think his children go to school here or had, and that is a great thing. Very, very nice young man. But through circumstances that we had nothing to do with, we don't have him. We don't have him here every day. He doesn't live in our president of selection doesn't have anybody here that lives in the county. Other firms can say the same thing. They live in Jessamine County. And I think when Kevin left, plus that fact just tells me that, and when they came back the second time, Ms. Davis asked him a very specific question, and this was probably the most troubling. When we left, they were ready to start that day. As soon as we said, hey, we think you need to be our architect, they were ready to start that day. 3 weeks later, they hadn't done anything. And that shows me what their commitment to us was at the time. And I just have a hard time with that, plus past history, which I've heard really good things about the other firm, and I've heard some good things about Sherman Carter. I also know that there have been some school districts that had one and changed for the other. So there's some competition there. Then on their layouts, the utilization of the space available, if you can remember back, there was ample space for, but there seemed like it wasn't as spread out, and it was all in one neat package with one, and this one seems to be spread out. I don't even think we mentioned an auditorium, and I don't think that was on our list anyway, but they threw that in. Google Earth, I think they made a presentation that it was about 25 foot is what it's going to be, elevation difference between the elevations where they build it in. That's a 25-foot drop. The track, where they've got the track, seemed to be in the upper deck, and it was in the walking path around the gym. Looks a lot like it would block the view of the people in the 5 or 6 rows up. It would obstruct the view from the gym. And there were just several different things that just really makes it hard for me to say retain it. I don't think that the commitment we made was to them and Kevin Cheek. And for whatever reason, but Kevin left, which is his business and his alone. We all get to a point in time where we make a lot of decisions. That commitment was what we had committed to. He had committed to us, and we had committed to them. I think that kind of eased that commitment out the door. We're back to square one, and all the other things that I've mentioned, I think I would hope to change some minds. Of course, every one of these options is over the 20, and another thing, every one of the options is in excess of the 20 million that we said we had available. So one's 22.4, one's 24.5, one's 23.4. And that's no guarantee that they're gonna come in at that, because we don't know what they come in at until the bonds say.
But we did ask them to include all options, and then we did say that we would come back and select projects. So what they've given us is reality, as close to reality as they can possibly predict.
You know, and hopefully, none of the other architects will know either. I mean, that's just a general statement. When you float bonds, you don't know what they're gonna do till the day's over.
It's true.
And, then that's when you have to decide whether you're gonna go with what you got, or you're gonna have to redo it, or go to something else, or what.
Okay,
That's what I got to say.
okay. Yes, ma'am.
As Dr. Lamb said, it was a long day. And it was my first experience interviewing architects, and I sure hope if we ever go through this again, we won't do it all in one day.
Oh, we're not.
But it was an interesting day, interesting presentation. But when it came down to the final vote, I guess I looked at it a little bit differently, in that when I had to make a decision between two, I did take in the fact that someone was local, and as Mr. Query said, could offer an extra set of eyes. It was hard because I had actually worked with Dr. Seven, Carver Technical Elementary. And it was a very interesting situation. They worked with us very well, let us have input. So that made it hard too. I was disappointed in the presentations, doing the interviews. I felt some were more prepared than others, and really felt that Sherman Parker, I really felt like their presentation wasn't as strong as some of the other presentations. But again, having someone who could be here and go by frequently during the week and be checking on it every week and have another set of eyes, that played a lot into my decision. Not that they weren't a good firm, but I just felt that having that local input would be to our benefit. So that is why I voted that way. I did not feel it was the best presentation. I feel like all five are very talented. I think all five firms have something to offer. I'm not sure we would ever go wrong with any of the five, but based on that day, I did not feel like that their presentation was the strongest. I did not think that they had presented the information that had been requested as well as some of the others. So when we got down to the top two, I did vote for them because of it. Now, I still feel like that they're very knowledgeable. I feel like they will give us 110%, especially since we've gone through this. But as I said before, I think that they had three opportunities to do what I had hoped that they would have done the first time, because other firms did, and they did not, and did not the second time either. I was really disappointed in our second meeting, because I really expected them. I felt like the third meeting was what was going to happen at the second meeting, and it took the third meeting to happen. But they're good people, and I think they have a lot to offer, and it is a very, very difficult situation.
It is. Okay. After listening to my fellow board members, I believe the decision that needs to be made is, do we stay with Sherman Carter Barnhart, or do we switch to Popelter Solider? So.
Let me ask you a question, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
And you mentioned a second architectural firm. Is that the same one, if I'm correct, that did the middle school? I mean, this building,
Yes.
It
and
is.
the same one that did Paint Lake? So I think you gotta look at the difference in success stories, so to speak. I think your Paint Lake building was a success story, looked really nice. The construction of this building, I'm not sure that we've necessarily been totally satisfied with the longevity of the building and the way it's gone through, and the climatic conditions we've had within the building itself. That may be something they had no control of. That I'm not sure with, because we know that this building, and not because of them, but because of where the board wanted to put the building at that time, is on basically underground springs, which complicated the success story of this building. So if we are going to judge one firm because of something that those that were remaining didn't know at that particular time, and had no really control, then we need to bring in a comparative analysis with everything everybody has done. So I just think, food for thought too.
I think that's a good point. I sort of tried to do some research on that. If I'm not mistaken, when this building opened in 90, that it was award-winning design. And yes, there were complications, but doing some research on that, I don't know that that was the architect. It was actually
Right.
the unit that was put in, and I understand it was defective. And they had, the board, KDE knew about that, but of course we had our problems here in Garrett County before KDE, I guess, allowed the district to make amends and try to get it straightened out. And so, and that particular situation could really happen with anyone. The architect's the one that designs the building. Putting carpet on the walls is not real smart in any, whether it be home or school, especially in the basement area. We know we're going to have moisture, but that happened. It was nice. It was a sound buffer because it was the music rooms at that time. So, yeah, there were some really hard lessons learned during that experience. But the actual design of the building did receive attention. So yes, that should be noted. It's not that we're putting our head in the sand and not recognizing that happened. And yes, we had a good experience at Franklin Elementary. And I'm not sure the people working at the middle school might have said they had a good experience working with the architects as well. But the unit that was used, which I'm not sure would go back to the architects, was defective.
Help me out a little bit on, I'm seeking information. I'm not trying to pick one or the other right now. I'm just seeking information. Like on Pop Filter, did they actually come in and show us how they wanted things that they would suggest that they said, and that type of thing? Because I went back through the book and I just really couldn't see it in there.
Samacar was the group that brought their own TV screen,
Okay.
and they were the first one to propose the idea of potentially filling in the sinkhole and putting a parking lot on the area behind the high school. So nobody could talk to us to talk to you all about that in any fashion. So that was their first, that was the first big experience that we had with that kind of conversation. So I think if I say those two things, they brought their TV in and that was their proposal, it helps us remember who they were.
It helps you get your memory refreshed on this. But we saw a whole lot
Yeah.
on that day.
Yeah, that was a long day. And when we interview construction managers, we will not do it in one day. We will pretty bad. All right.
Well, I will pose a motion, and I'm only doing it to expedite a decision, because I feel like we've all had a lot of conversation. And so if the motion that I make fails, then obviously we would defer to the remaining, right? Is that how we're gonna do this?
That is my understanding.
Okay, so I will make the motion that we stay with Sherman Carter Barnhart as our hired architect and move forward with a contract with Sherman Carter Barnhart.
Okay, Dr. Lamb made a motion to remain with Sherman Carter Barnhart. Do I have a second? The motion dies for lack of a second. So I'm assuming since Vopector Somaker was the number 2, that we'll revert back to.
I would suggest that you do an actual motion here so that you have it in place as to who you did select,
Thank you, sir.
so that there's no misunderstanding as to who the second was.
So if I may, I make a motion that we have, I can never say it, Claude Feltner
Vopector
Somaker
Somaker.
as the architect that we move forward with securing a contract.
Okay, Dr. Lamb sends your motion to hire Lockfelter Sonaker as our architect of the new project. Do I have a second?
I say,
All right, Mr. McQuarrie, second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, let me know by lifted hand. Please know that all board members were in favor, so Lockfelter Sonaker will be our architect for.
So point of note here, when this arose, I checked with your board attorney, and we have to give them a 7-day notice. So I will notify them, I'll draft a letter tomorrow notifying Sherman Carter Barnhart of your decision. Can't move forward with anything with the other until we've given them that 7-day period. Anything that we may owe them, we will
I was gonna say, yeah.
pay whatever is appropriate for the work that they have done. And when that happens, then we'll extend a request to Lockfelter Sonaker to serve in the role that you all have asked for tonight. Just
So
wanted you to know
you can go ahead and inform them.
that following the
But they
7-day
can't start
period.
until after,
Right.
oh, not till after 7 days?
No, I can notify them of your decision. It's public notice right now. Anybody who's watching would be aware of that. So if any of the architectural firms are watching tonight, they would know what has occurred. I don't have any problem letting them know that that's going to be your request, but there's nothing that you can really do in a final fashion with them until we've given that 7-day notice to
Is that week,
Sherman Carter.
day notice, or 7 days?
7 days, as I understand it, is regular calendar days. So if I notice tomorrow, then next Friday would be the time that you will be complete with that.
Thank you, sir. All right, we ready to vote? All in favor, let it.
You did vote.
We did
You
vote.
did.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's why
I'll
I
make a
waited
motion
till
to
I'm-
adjourn.
wait a minute, I gotta make the motion to adjourn.
There's the motion I'm looking for.
Dr. Lamb did it. Yeah, and I'll second.
Make it a second.
There you go.
Motion,
Who made the motion? Okay.
I did.
all right. Dr. Lamb seconded to adjourn. All in favor, let me know by lifted hand. Thank you. This special call meeting is adjourned. Thank all of you that joined us and stuck with us through all this discussion. We appreciate you.
Get some free medical.